Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is your boy Mark, and today we are going to be going over the top 10 plus one honorable mention, so technically 11 worst first cars for you to own. Now this is probably going to offend a couple of people, but I want you to understand, I'm not saying these cars are bad cars in general. I'm just saying they're probably not the best choice for a first car. And on top of that, I also want to say, yes, there's obviously exceptions. If you're really smart, very mature, you could probably own a couple of these. If you know a lot more about cars than the average guy, you can probably own a couple of them. But for the most part, the average man should not be buying one of these as their first car. Guys, before we get into the video though, really quick, I want to say over 80% of you guys aren't subscribed. So if you want to help your brother out, hit that subscribe button, and I'd really appreciate it, man. Either way though, let's get right into the video with number 10. All right, so coming in at the number 10 spot is going to the Nissan Versa. I mean, this one, you're just gonna have to hear me out here, because people are probably like, why would he say the Nissan Versa is a bad car to be driving as a first car? They're pretty good economy cars, I would say. And you're right, they're economy cars, but they're just very ugly. There's just nothing special about a Nissan Versa. Sure, it gets good gas mileage, but it's not even like the best gas mileage. It is very cheap, yeah, but it's only cheap because nobody wants one, because there's no soul to them. There's no character in them. You gotta have at least a little bit of character in your car. And on top of that, they're not even that reliable for a commuter car. In my opinion, if you're looking for literally just a commuter car, something that's reliable, can get you pretty good gas mileage, it's going to get you to school and back on time, whatever, I would go for a Civic or a Corolla. You know, those are like at least somewhat fun, somewhat cool to drive. A Nissan Versa though, like, just no, ew. Coming in at number 9 is a little bit of friendly fire, because I owned one of these actually, but it is the Chrysler PT Cruiser. I mean, do I even have to explain? Do I even got to explain to you why a Chrysler PT Cruiser is a bad first car? I shouldn't have to. Let me tell you, I had a Chrysler PT Cruiser as my first car. Okay, I got it in 2018, and I drove it for 2.5 years, I think, until I got the 350Z. But even after I got the 350Z, I was still driving the PT Cruiser as a daily. And yeah, sure, they're like reliable. They get you good gas mileage. They're not going to get you in any trouble. But God forbid, it just does not make you feel like a car guy in the slightest bit. It makes you feel like the opposite. You do not feel in any way cool. And I know that sounds stupid, like, oh, you don't need to feel cool in your first car. Yeah, you do. All right, let's be honest. Everybody wants to feel a little bit cool, all right? And nobody wants to be driving around the goddamn PT Cruiser. It's not a good, I just don't recommend it. Coming in at number 8, we're finally out of like the just two cars that are just like boring and in my opinion just not cool cars at all. We're actually into like performance models now that actually matter, and it is the BMW E30. In my opinion, it's just too old to be able to justify owning as like a 16-year-old new car guy. Now, is it reliable? It can be if you get it in good condition, and I mean like great condition. It's not going to be bad if you get it in that condition, but if you don't, and most likely you're not, because like I said, this is your first car, so you're probably going to buy a very cheap one that's going to need some work. That's when it becomes unreliable. And then when it's unreliable, you're gonna have to be fixing this car that you are going to be needing to drive everywhere, because it's your only car, obviously. And on top of that, parts are not going to be cheap because it's an old BMW. It's not that comfortable to drive. It doesn't have a lot of space. It's nothing super great about it besides the fact that it looks awesome. Yes, it looks really cool, and you'll be a baller if you manage to pull this off, but it's going to be just a bad financial nightmare. Coming in at number 7 is another car that hits a little too close to home, because it is my other car, the Nissan 350Z. I just can't seem to make good choices when it comes. Actually, no, because I have an Integra now, and that, my friends, is a great first car. But either way, 350Z, this one hurts. This one hurts a little bit, but it is the truth, and I'm a truthful man on this channel. They make a very good horsepower number, making like around 300 horsepower, depending on what engine you get in it. If you get the HR, it's 306, DE is 287, but that's too high for a new driver, and they're rear-wheel drive, and they look really cool. But like all that stuff combined is the problem. As a male teenager in a fast rear-wheel drive, cool looking sports car that's going to have a lot of eyes on you, you're going to want to show off, and it's going to get you hurt. It actually has one of the highest crash rates due to that exact reason. Now, it is actually a pretty safe car. Once you get into an accident, they actually have a very good safety rating, but it's just the fact that people like to show off. And with a rear-wheel drive, I know people are going to be like, 350Z isn't high horsepower. It is. Okay, it is. It's 300 horsepower. For a new driver, that's pretty high. And with all that stuff together, it's just not a good combo. Coming in at number 6 is a car that you guys probably didn't really expect to see on this list, actually, because I put it in a lot of my videos for like the best first cars. But after really looking it up, I figured out something about it that's just not that good for a new driver. It is, of course, the Subaru WRX. Like I said, this one's probably going to hurt some people's feelings, but it is sadly has one major downside, and that is that these cars have a massive reputation for street racing with the cops. So you're coming in at number 5 is going to the Jeep Wrangler. This one is also going to insult a couple people, but hear me out, man. All right, hear me out. First of all, they aren't that reliable and they're not that comfortable to drive. Obviously, I don't think you're looking for comfortability when you're picking up a Wrangler, but either way, in case you didn't know that, you're not going to be like the most relaxed person driving one of these things. On top of that, they're very expensive on gas, but the main thing is, once again, ego. You, as a 16-year-old dude, you're going to be able to go wherever you want, however fast you want, and you can do it pretty reliably, to be honest, because those Jeeps, you know, they get the engines nowadays aren't that reliable, but back in the day they were reliable, and they could do whatever you wanted them to do. And that's going to get you in trouble. You're going to get stuck, you're going to get it wrecked, you're going to try going over a tree that you thought was a tree, but it's not actually a tree and it's a freaking swamp, and now you're under the water drowning. It's just not going to be a good time, man. Now, on top of that too, you're, like I said, as a 16-year-old, you probably like to go fast. These things going fast are a nightmare. You take a corner fast on one of these things, you are doing 15 barrel rolls. Very bad reputation now with all the hype that's coming around the Hellcats and stuff, and people can't tell the difference between a Hellcat and a normal Challenger, so they're gonna be like, oh, there's a Hellcat. Dude, probably gotta keep my eye on that guy. I would recommend, if you're thinking about getting a Challenger, at least get the Charger, okay? Like, at least get the Charger. It's a little bit slower. It's a little bit lighter, has more space, it's a little bit more controlled. I would recommend that. Coming in at 3rd place for this list of the most unsafe, worst purchases for a first car is going to the wonderful Toyota MR2. These things may seem very intriguing due to the fact that they're a Toyota, B, they make a very low amount of horsepower, only at like 100 to 200 horsepower depending on what year and model that you get, and they are like pretty cool looking, right? So you're probably like, oh, that's not a bad choice, I could get that. But they are mid-engined, which is not only very hard to work on, especially for a new mechanic, but it also means that it's going to be a lot harder to control. Mid-engine cars that are rear-wheel drive had a tendency to snap oversteer, which is where you're going into a corner, lift off the gas, press on the brakes a little, and the back end just absolutely kicks out. Which is going to that like snap oversteer even catches up to the most experienced drivers sometimes. And so if you're not super experienced at driving, which obviously as a first-time driver you're not going to be, then chances are you're going to be caught out by a snap oversteer and you're going to go be wrapped around a tree, and I don't want to see that. Coming in 2nd place is going to be a car that's notorious actually for just being a bad first car, the Ford Mustang GT. Obviously this depends on which generation that you're going with, and that'll also determine how much horsepower you get. But to be honest with you, none are a very good option because they're all rear-wheel drive. They're all pretty heavy muscle cars with a decent amount of horsepower, and they all love to get sideways. Mustangs, believe it or not, are not the most planted cars, okay? Like, they like to spin out. They're not good track cars. So you're driving around these normal corners in your country, wherever you live, you're going to be spinning out around every corner. And if you don't know how to control oversteer, it's going to be a bad time. These also get a pretty horrible rep for being crowd killers due to how much they spin out. So on top of just being like a bad car to drive, you also aren't going to get the best rep in the community right out of the way, which in my opinion, I have a freaking 350Z and a PT Cruiser, so obviously I don't really care too much about like what people think of me, but I'm just saying if you do care about that kind of stuff, then I would look out for that. Honorable mention for today, and it's a little bit of a cheat code, that's why I put it as the honorable mention, but it is literally any British engineering car ever. Whether it's a Mini Cooper, Lotus, freaking Jaguar, McLaren, doesn't matter. If it's British, don't get it as a first car. They are just ridiculously unreliable compared to the rest. That's really the only downside to them. They can look really cool. As a matter of fact, McLaren's like one of my favorite car brands of all time, but even that is hard unless you're dropping like big bucks, because like the economy British cars are not that cool looking. There's also not a lot of parts available for them in America, so when they do break, which they will, it's not going to be that cheap to maintain. It's just not the best choice. But coming in at 1st place, and I'm sure you probably saw it coming from a mile away, but it is the Mazda RX-8. These cars really just don't have anything good about them for a new driver, and that really hurts because I do like the RX-8, but there's just not that much good. There's not a lot of space. They're not the fastest out there. They're not the coolest looking. They're not that cheap to buy or to modify. They're not good on gas, and most importantly, they're just incredibly unreliable. They have a rotary engine in them, and rotary engines can be reliable if you take care of them, but let's be honest here, as a new driver, you're not going to. you're not going to take care of it, and it's going to blow up, and then you're going to be out of a car, and it's going to be a horrible time. On top of all that, they are still rear-wheel drive as well, so like winter conditions and a sporty car might cause for a little bit of an ego boost, and you're going to have the Mustang effect. It's just, there's almost everything that goes into like a bad first car is on the RX-8. There's not really anything good about the RX-8. Like I said, it's still a cool car to me, but wait until you have like another daily and experience under your belt to buy one of these things and use it as like a Sunday driver or a track car or something. But don't use it as a new daily. That's just not a good idea. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's video of the top 10 worst first cars to own as a 16-year-old high schooler or college kid, whatever your situation is. If this is not a good first car to get behind the wheel of. Okay, boys, let me know what other videos you'd like to see down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, in the top of the comments is going to be a pinned comment to my new gaming channel where I go over all GTA Online content. So if you're into GTA Online stuff, go check that out, my good friend. Thank you. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das Vidania. Have a nice night.